And like magic, we are live everywhere. There we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, the usual folks, Randall and Neil, to Randall, Neil. And
Hi,
today
Glenn.
we've got our special guest speaker is Glynis Devine. Apparently, she is divine. Apparently,
So I'm told.
there you go.
Not by
And
my family.
topic today is why diversity matters in your world, particularly in business. But we're going to dig into this from different perspectives, right? It may not be what you think it is. But before we get started, Glynis, I'm going to have you tell the world a little bit about you and
No
what makes
pressure.
Glynis tick.
In terms of business or personally, I'll start with business.
Okay, let's
I'm
do
the
that.
founder and president of She Suite, which is all the magic about how women at the top are changing the game. So our business creates better women leaders. Personally, I've been an entrepreneur from the age of 20, which is more years ago than I admit to. And I adore what I do.
Well, we adore you. And we actually had a live presence of you at our in-person event last week.
That was
So we
awesome.
actually had your presence there. And what a rock star masterclass you did in making people understand that it's a people problem, right? And so if you want to know more about that, you can check out the video recording, because like what we do today, everything we do is recorded. So I'm going to kick this off, right? And then my co-host is going to jump in with questions, and we will grill Glynis to get to the bottom of why diversity matters to anybody, to any company for that matter. So
I'm ready.
there you go. So diversity. Everybody, when you think of diversity, people think about backgrounds of people. They think about women in tech or women in the business and so on, and all that's true, right? And that's the key to the whole message, that is true, right? But the question is why it matters, all right? And when you really peel back this onion, it seems like it's a mindset, right? It's like we've been doing something like we've been doing all the time. So we hire a certain type of demographics because that's what we've been doing for the last 100 years. So we just continue repeating the same thing over and over, and we don't put ourselves out there in our mindset to change, to make that adaptation, to bring in a wider, more diverse workforce. And the reality is if we don't do this, we lose, right? Businesses lose, right? And if you do it, businesses win. The data's crazy on it, but we're going to start by the point of big question: why does
Why?
diversity matters? So, Glynis, first hard question: why it
Oh,
matters?
excellent. So my answer to that became crystal clear, pardon the pun, when I went last week for new glasses. And anybody who wears glasses, whether they're reading glasses or distance glasses, you've probably or those beautiful yellow ones. Yes, thanks, Randall. You've probably gone into the office and had all of those, this better, this worse, this better, this worse. For a person who loves to ace tests, it is disaster. I don't know what the right answer is, but the right answer was, when I put on my brand new glasses, I could see so much clearer. And that's what we're asking people to do, is put on a different lens to see your organization. Because traditionally, tech, a part of all STEM industries, science, technology, engineering, and math, we are victims of having a limited lens. Traditionally, it has been more male heavy. It has been more white heavy. It has been more certain characteristics heavy. And so what we're saying is, when we only see our organization, our problems, and our solutions from a limited lens, we're missing so much of the world. And especially for us in tech, when we serve a demographic, we need to reflect that demographic in our product development, in our research, in our decision making, in our strategy. We need to reflect who we serve, who our end user is. So if we're not diverse, and that means every element of diversity, right down to personality, skills, and mindset, we're only seeing part of the problem, part of the solution, part of the end users. That's why it's key.
So Randall, you may have to take off that yellow lens glass because you're seeing everything now like orange and yellow, aren't you?
Well, more than that, I'm thinking of everybody who has glasses that also had to wear a mask recently. It's not just the lens. Sometimes the lens get fogged up and you can't see anything. And I think that's a big problem is a lot of organizations are looking through foggy lenses. Everything is not very crystal clear, and you need help from the outside to kind of get that airflow going so that you could actually see clearly. And I want to bring up something that happened at the end of the event, which I think is very important. Somebody was talking to you, Glynis, uh, about who we should ask in an organization if there is a problem with female representation. Maybe you can kind of share that with us.
I loved that question and answer. That was a great conversation. Thank you, Rendell. We were talking about what are some of the things that women can do within their organization to nurture more women at the top, a more balanced group of decision makers around the table. And she said something very profound. She said, we're not looking for mentors, we're looking for sponsors. And I had to stop and think about that. Every article we read about diversity is find a mentor, find a mentor, find a mentor. And her point was, we know what we need to do. We don't need someone to show us the way. We need somebody to clear the path. And I thought that was brilliant wisdom, because what we really need is people to advocate for us. We need people to say, hey, so-and-so's strength is such and such. You need to put her up to bat. So-and-so's strength is such and such. You need to consider him in product development. So-and-so is. So that's how we get the right talent in the right place. Excellent point. That is what you were speaking about, right, Randall?
I was actually thinking of another conversation as well. One,
my mind reading skills were not good.
I think it was the same person, but what a perception is at the top and the perception at the bottom might be two different things.
Okay, excellent point. So one of the things that at Channel Next we have is a 19-point assessment. And what it's meant to do is make organizations aware of how female friendly they are. And one of the comments, again, I've had a lot of conversations, a limited amount of conversations with people from organizations who have taken that assessment and were surprised, very surprised. They thought they were more diverse than they are. They thought they were more open than they are. They thought they were more progressive than they are. And one of the things that we found in our discussion is, well, it depends on who you ask. And as a leadership coach, one of the things that I hear, oh my golly, almost every conversation, somebody says, yeah, we do it that way because somebody at the top decided that was a good thing to do. And if they'd only asked the people who implement the processes, we could have told them how to do it better. And there's a gap, right? There's a gap between perception and reality. There's a gap between senior level management and the decision makers and the implementers sometimes. And so we want to close that gap. We want to make sure that so I invite you all, if you haven't already done our 19-point assessment, not only take it, but get everybody in the organization to take it, because that's going to highlight where we have some gaps. And there are gaps in most cases. Yeah, great point, Randall.
I feel I have to chip in now with a glasses-related story. So I've got two there for you, which I think are applicable, really, which is, I think you're right, it is about looking for your lenses, because what I've always found is that when you put on those different lenses, you get that fresh perspective. And the two which come to mind is I like to go fishing. And I've got these magic polarized spectacles that when I look at the water, I don't see the reflection, so I can see the fish. And it's like, if you're not wearing the right lens, you just miss things. Or another time, I've got another pair of glasses I used to wear when I used to be like around and go to rock concerts. And they were ultraviolet. So I'd look at those double yellow lines beside the roads, and they'd be bright red. It just changed the colour of the world. So what I find quite interesting, and obviously it's a reflection of the journeys and the businesses which you work in. I think I've been fairly lucky in having that exposure to open-minded tech executives. Because my background is it's been within, like, on the publisher side as well, is that different perspectives are always welcome. And if we don't take those different perspectives and not just a snapshot here and there, but build those into the culture of your business, make those capture points. So that's a great example of do the channel next test. But actually, I think you need your own internal watchdogs within your organization and go, do we continue to reflect our customers? And you can do it in quite interesting ways. So again, because we're talking about diversity in its true sense of the word, which is diversity everywhere, I can remember years ago hiring a bunch of developers, and I think I made the poor recruitment company want to just run away and hide in a darkened corner, because I said, I want these developers. They've all got to be, so I'm dating it a bit now. It's all Visual C++. They had to be good at. And I said, but my only expectation is I don't want anybody with a degree in computer science, because I didn't want that type of programmer. So actually, sometimes in your business, how do you find the on-ramp for the person who could be the perfect person you're looking for, but doesn't maybe come from an orthodox background? How do we also capture those people and their opinion and then their perspectives?
Sure, because they come from a specific lens as well, right? We all drink from the same well, as opposed to seeing things from a different perspective. I think it was Google who did the first version of that experiment, where one afternoon a month they allowed anybody to work in the department of their choice. And what they found was a few things, a few expected results and a few surprise results. The fact that people dipped their toe into doing something that they had never done before because it was safe to do, right? They weren't going to lose their job or lose their inability to pay their mortgage because they jumped ship on the industry that they'd chosen. They got to dip their toe in. They also saw problems with a different lens, right? They saw their part in how they created that problem in their own department, and they saw potential solutions. And so I love that. Absolutely, Neil. We need to sometimes entertain people that don't think the same way we do. I get the most out of conversations with people who disagree with me.
Yeah. I think also what I enjoyed about I go back to that conversation because it was really honest. Mm-hmm. And they said that probably the best person who has the clearest vision is somebody new to the organization. Yeah. So when somebody has been there for a while, maybe they took the tests and even the numbers. If you look at the numbers, just straight data might not tell the story. If you have 50-50, let's say 50% of women in the workforce, that's a great number. It's way above average. But if they're all in the bottom rung and there's none in the C-suite, then that doesn't really count as real diversity in the workplace. So that's something to take into account. But the people at the bottom that just kind of start, they have the freshest vision of anybody, and it's good to ask them what they think.
So interesting comment, Randall, and I appreciate that a lot. When we look at the career journey, most organizations have at least 50% of women, fewer in tech generally, more in education and health. What is consistent across all industries is the further along we go that career path, the fewer and fewer women represented. That was how She Suite ever came to be. I was emceeing a women's leadership forum, and one of the women from Catalyst got up and she shared some statistics, and I'm busy tweeting them out, right? And she said 5.6% of all CEOs are females. And so I thought, I got that wrong. I'll wait till she sits down. So she sat down beside me. I said, what was that stat you shared? She said 5.6. I said, 5.6? That's messed. She said, that's why we have jobs. Because their organization was responsible for changing that landscape, right? And that was the catalyst for me saying that's so wrong. That means that our decision-making skills are impeded by our lens, right? And that's just with women. Diversity is made up of so much more than just gender, right?
Yeah, and in case you want to know, this is a X-ray lens, right? So I got this, back in the Swimman days. But here's the thing.
Not on Amazon, then, right?
No, of course we don't buy from Amazon. They no, we buy directly. So here's the thing. What I would look at is let's look at seeing a bit of the numbers about why diversity matters. I mean, and we can argue the point, but I think there's a comment by one of the users out there, the viewers, says that they need a fresher, new narratives, more proactive, open to new initiatives and so on, critical thinking as well. and they need to figure out how everybody could be in a bit of an equal footing. It's a great statement. I agree that's where we need to be, but how do we get there from here, right? And I think sometimes we need to kind of point out the fact of what do companies look like when they have a significant number of women and a diverse workforce embedded within the company. What is the outcomes? Some of the data I've seen, and I can't remember what study it was, but it shows that 40% of the companies that's run by women are more profitable than men. And there's lots of these stats that's pops up now. Of course,
I'm, I'm,
all this. Go ahead.
I'll just admit, Julian, I don't have the stat, but I can give you some kind of anecdotal evidence. I've spent a lot of time growing and developing sales team and looking at sales specifically in the technology sector. You are crazy if you don't have an equal gender balance in your sales team, because the open rate from females into the tech sector is about 20% higher. So for the thinking purely at the commercial level, you're going to get a lot more opportunities. And it's one of those things. People just infer things and they perceive. And I think sometimes as a guy, you've got to be careful when you come, especially on the gender divide, because like I sit my side of the gender. So my opinion is actually, although it's valid, it's going to be flawed because I cannot see truly from a woman's perspective because I'm not one. But what I always do find is that I think that in that sales situation, there's still a tendency for aggressive sales techniques from men, which is far less common in women. I think women are natural born communicators, and they're going to go straight into rapport building and consultative selling, whereas there's still, especially that junior run of salespeople. So I always love to see, let's get more sales directors who are female, because what they'll do is they'll start to smooth off some of the rough edges of some of the guys when they're coming in. And it's the same thing with, again, talk about ethnicities in the sales environment. What do they also bring along with them? In lots of cases, they bring additional language skills. If you've got a client and their language is not English, but you want to do a deal with them, they're going to so much easier to deal with if you've embraced that diversity and say, actually, we've got people who can communicate in the right skill. And if, for instance, this is not always the case, but definitely I'm thinking when I open a business in Panama, if you do not have native speakers, they will not do business with you. So sometimes we're holding ourselves back because we kind of think, how would I cope with that language barrier? And it's like, there's no such thing as barriers. There's always ways we can smooth barriers down and remove them and make things work. But I think the natural reaction is, this is the way we've always done it. We'll keep doing it that way. And I think the larger a company becomes, the older a company it survives for, the harder it is for the management at that team to go, do you know what? We'll just mix it up. Whereas a startup can go, it doesn't work this way today. I'm going to change 90 degrees tomorrow. Doesn't work? Another 90 degrees. I don't care. So I think there's also linked to this diversity piece. I think for me is, I talk about every single session. It's culture within businesses. And culture is set by the ownership. And sometimes they do it for the right reasons, but as unintended consequences. I share another anecdote around Zero. We've all heard of Zero. The old CEO from Zero, in a conversation which I was privy to, once said that he would take an hour with every new employee to go through the values of that business. And you think, that's absolutely amazing. But notice I said the outgoing. Who does it now? If he held on that for that long because he was convinced about the culture and he's not baked that into that DNA, all that good work goes out and we're back to cliches on notice boards pinned on the wall. So for me, a lot of this is going to come back to build the right culture, will attract the diversity. Because we can have a policy, we can have a great policy about equal diversity and we don't discriminate, blah, 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 etc. But that may work with recruitment, but they won't stay, and they won't stay long term, as the culture says, great, we've got a crash in the corner. Yeah, you need time off for religious reasons, that's fine as well. So it's I think this is probably Julian your most ambitious master chat, because it's not like a big issue, it's like the world.
Oh, it's massive. Yeah, I agree.
We like to tackle the big issues for sure, and we're going to get bigger. But Glynis, what do you have to say about that? About the actual outcomes of the data, the anecdotal, whatever you want to say. What are you seeing as outcomes when a workforce is more diverse in a company compared to one that is not?
Great question and excellent feedback, Neil. I think that you hit the nail on the head. When people communicate like they want to get the message out versus they want the message to be heard, communication breaks down, right? Part of the keys that I teach in my She-Suite program is communication, mindset, and imposter syndrome. And communication is key. You can't craft the message unless you're crafting it to be heard. So I worked for 5 years in Saudi Arabia. One of the first things that I was put through was a culture understanding, right? I live in Quebec. The difference between speaking in French and speaking in English. One simple thing is when we address people in French, typically we use Mr. or Mrs. until we're invited to use their given name. That's not the same way in English, right? In English, heck, Rogers calls you and says, okay, if I call you Glynis, yeah, sure. And we dive right in, right? So English and French culture is different. Us and everybody else is different. And it's important to understand where they're coming from before we ever open our mouth. And you hit the nail on the head, Neil. We have to understand who we're talking to. Everything is sales. It used to blow me away. I had an organization of 200 people, and every now and again I'd meet somebody and they'd say, oh, I'm not in sales. You are in sales from the time you open your eyes in the morning till you close them at night. You're selling people on your worth. You're selling people on your ideas. You're selling people on your authority. You're selling your kids on cleaning their room. You're selling constantly. And the key of doing that well is putting other people in mind as the recipient of that message, not my mandate is the priority. And so you ask, Julian, what's the difference? I'm going to back up a little bit and say it's not about how many women you have, but how many healthy people you have. It's the healthy part that's important. You know, people will say to me, oh, you must be a strong feminist. No, I'm an equalist. I don't believe that women should run the world any more than I believe that men should run the world. I think that we're shortchanging ourselves of half of the picture if we don't have a blend. And so I think the right women are key.
I think the thing that you just touched me there, Glynis, I think is echoing that same point. Is someone, I can't remember who said it. They were famous and far more clever than I, but it's like equality doesn't mean we're the same.
Right.
Men and women, cultures were all different, but all equally valuable. And that's the bit where it gets lost. And I think this as a hangover probably to systems and processes, my other things I love to bang on about every single master chat. But if you think about it, the indoctrination which we go through from kindergarten all the way through school education says that we must do this. And if you happen to be a square peg in a round hole, there's something wrong with you, rather than what we know is the truth, which actually you're just in the wrong hole. Maybe that hole should be a bit more flexible for us to actually work around. So I just want to share that ping straight into mind that we're not about saying everyone's the same, everyone is equal, and then we can enjoy the difference. And when we embrace that difference, what it does mean is that you're then going to have those. And again, I'm always going to, from my perspective, come back to sales. Is when you're having those conversations, you then go, okay, I've had this initial phone call with company X. I know what they're after, and I know the perfect person on my team who will relate to that business. Rather than being in the situation, go, well, it's going to be John or it's going to be Sue because that's their job. It's like, I know we can be clever, we can be smarter. And I think we have to do, because in this kind of the great reset or the post-pandemic world, the millennial with their gig economy, we're having people who don't want to be square pegs in a round hole, and they're voting with their feet and leaving. So the smart companies are going to listen to what Glynis is saying, listen to what happens via, the Channel Partnership Alliance, and actually make these changes. And the other thing, which for most coaches is going to be the same thing, it's all about empowering the individual to be the best version of themselves. Because the minute we do that, we get better results. Well,
and not to be afraid to get out of our own way. Randall, we had a conversation last week, and it was all about the challenge when we're scaling our business of being the one-man show or the one-woman show and scaling to be multi-employed, multi-departmental to the project. And the challenge is moving from a mom and pop to a scalable business, because now we're not the only face that our customer sees, right? And how we need to get out of our own way. I remember when my organization started growing to the point where I couldn't personally do all the training firsthand, I had to empower my leaders to do that. And sometimes they liked them more than me. And the first time it happened, I went, ooh, And then all of a sudden I went, reality check. That's awesome. So I think we need to be comfy that when we're not, especially in sales, right? If we're not the fit, find the fit and put that person forward, because it makes you as the recommender look like the rock star. It builds trust between the customer and us, that we didn't let ego drive that decision. We let impact drive that solution, right?
And I think the main ingredient in that problem of being the bottleneck of your own success is
Yep.
fear. Fear of trusting other people to be as, we want people to be the same as us when we hire somebody. But as a business owner, that will never happen. Nobody will be as passionate, will be as hardworking as the business owner. So to expect that is to expect failure, because nobody can live up to that, because they would be their own business leaders. But if we can get somebody to get close to it and at least embrace the part that we entrust them with, and they do that smaller version 100%, then we can put the right people in the right position.
Well, and that's the key, right? The 100%. The more I scaled my organization, the less cycles I had to offer. And so I was doing things rushed. I was doing things not quite as detailed. And suddenly I realized I was doing my customers a disservice. Better I give them someone who their task was only that customer, who they could give 100% to. I wasn't going to scale if I had to give 100% of me to every role that I had. That was impossible. So I had to decide what was the best fit for my skill set. And that's what I encourage talent to do. Don't morph. I mean, it's great. One of the challenges that I find in coaching, especially women, is the fact that they are extremely good at morphing to the task, morphing to the product, morphing to the style of communication. And it's great to be a chameleon. The challenge is we sometimes lose a sense of who we are intrinsically. And at 3:00 in the morning, when somebody wakes you out of a dead sleep, that's who you are authentically and intrinsically. And it's kind of like, the dating period of bringing on a new hire. You've got that 3 month. Well, first of all, you've got the person you interview with, right? They're never the person you hire, because they sold themselves really well in the interview, right? So you get a slightly different version when you hire them. And then once their probation period is over, sometimes you get a different version of them as well. We want to be authentic from the get-go. If you sit down to interview for a new position and it's not a fit, don't take it, right? Don't fill a hole with a round peg or a square peg in a round hole just to make it work, because ultimately you're going to pay 3 times that to hire the right person.
Can I ask? I have a question that relates to dreams, which is on the back wall there. Walt Disney.
Yep.
So what is, and I'm also going by a comment that was from one of our LinkedIn listeners about be the change you want to see in the world.
Oh, one of my favorite quotes.
And they say that this education starts from home onwards. So it's something that we got to start within our own little communities, which is our families, and then bring that to the business. But what is the dream that C-Suite has towards a company? What is the ultimate dream that scares you?
I love that question. Thank you. It is that it will grow faster than I'm able. It is that I am going to, I have a doorbell that sticks, and I'm praying you guys don't hear that over and over and over again. I apologize. My dream is that, okay, you know what? I'm going to peel back and be extremely transparent with you. My dream is that when a woman goes home to her family, that she's full, that she gives them the best version of her. So, Randall, you and I feel very strongly about the importance and the value of families. Too many people, and especially in my world, women, spend 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours a day with people that they don't necessarily I know you're going to think I'm going to say like, but I'm actually going to say choose to put in your life, right? You spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day with people that you don't choose to put in your life. Some of them you like, some you don't. If you're anything like me, when you get home at the end of the day, between homework and dinner and bedtime, you get this tiny little window that looks more like 2 to 3 hours to invest in the people who you did choose to put in your life, who you love and most days like, right? I find that people in general, not just women, are so fried. They're tired, especially after the last 2 years. There's been some positive outcomes out of the pandemic. There are some, negative outcomes out of the endemic. We did get to work from home. That was a reset button for a lot of families. That's great. The challenge is working two-dimensionally and missing the sizzle of that in-person connection drains us rather than fills our cup. And so add that to the difficulty of dealing with different people, a lot of them difficult. I don't want people going home at the end of the day empty, because the family is our future. And if we don't have the energy to fill our family's cup, we're in trouble as a civilization.
I think that speaks a lot to a company's culture. If you have a culture that drains you and you send your employees back home with nothing in the tank, something is wrong with the company.
Absolutely.
But if they have a good culture, they will come back fueled and happy to be, spending time with their family and happy to come back. We don't want people to say, like, have that case of the Mondays. But I think, again, I go back to the conversation, which is why I love Channel Next events, being live in person. You get the most out of it because of the conversation you have before and after. One of the conversations spoke about even the culture in a company and to be more inclusive. If a company culture event is a hockey game, well, that might only please some of the demographics of your company. So you have to think about how to please everybody. And that goes down to the culture, and it goes from the business owner and how they view the diversity within their company, and not just create events for one demographic, which is typically males.
It can be, absolutely.
I think building what Rand has just said there as well is realize that actually that exists at all levels of the business, because we tend to think that discomfort is at the entry level positions. But actually, sometimes that discomfort is all the way up to the directors. It is to the owners of the business. And what part of my mind is, I won't use the company name, but I'll put it in the context where it's very self-evident that you can probably narrow it down to, the clue could be, you can narrow it down to 4 businesses. But it was a very large global consultancy firm, of 4 you could think of possibly. And I know one of the partners, and every year they do like a partners event, and it was normally Monaco or wherever, something really glamorous with 7-course meal and no money spared. One particular partner brought them to London. He hired a double-decker bus, made them all wear flat caps, and they did pie, eel, and mash. As you can imagine, that made quite a few of these top executives who were more used to Monaco feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that this wasn't what life was truly about. But actually, that reflected the culture and the nature of another generation, a younger generation partners coming through. He said, actually, yeah, we can have all the luxuries, we can have all this, but that's not what we want. So for me, the interesting thing is we've spent quite a bit of time talking about families. I'm passionate about family. I work for my family. I don't work for anybody else because I want to give them the best experiences. And I definitely want to make sure that I'm the best version of them when I come home, that I'm not carrying the stress and work into my home place. But we've got to think about that from the business point of view, which is, as the business person, how do I breathe this into the living, breathing DNA of my business? And I think that's the challenge. How do we make diversity in all its forms part of people, systems, and processes, and exist at a level where really, like we say, a lot of these things, we shouldn't have these conversations. We shouldn't need to have them. But whether it's feminism, sexism, racism, we keep having them for like 200 odd years. And I think that's the thing I like about the tech sector, is we are a sector which adapts so rapidly and is based upon innovation that I believe that any sector can begin to unpick some of these issues, it will be the tech space.
normally we're halfway through the session. Normally, I get to ask much more questions, but all I am now is listening into this great conversation, and I'm just gonna chill back and just jump in there when I can.
So, Julian, what is your view on all of this?
Whatever your
Please.
views are is exactly what my views are. I agree totally with everything that everybody's saying there. Just to kind of circle back one last time to the productivity aspects. Sometimes, the companies are run by people who look at numbers and all that stuff, which is really cool. And the question then becomes, well, what does this do to my bottom line? How can diversity in my workplace add to my bottom line? And of course, there is some data out there you can play around with. But there's a couple of things that is happening today that is quite obvious that anybody could see. The Great Resignation, aka people are, everybody's working is already working. There's a massive shortage of people out there who want to work. One of the coaches on the drive up to the event last week counted, I believe, 240,
yeah.
something like this. Company
242 signs between Ottawa and that blew me away, that stat.
Yeah, that says looking for people to
We're
work, hiring.
Nous embauchons. Yep.
Well, there you go.
Crazy
So
idea.
that paints the picture in general. If there was a time when you need actual bodies, this is it, right? So do it because you need to hire people, because you need to get the right talent. But beyond that, these are just simply, things that's happening right now. We could say why it matters, but this employee shortage is important. And maybe now is a time, if there was a time, to make that change. So what does that change look like? Let's talk about how do you go from where you are as a company? And of course, there's companies out there that's already doing the right things with well-balanced people within their organizations and so on. So kudos to you if you're in that group of companies. Keep it up, spread the word, contact us. We'd like to do a news interview on you to spread that word even further. But for the others who are just not there yet. So Glynis, what would you suggest as the step one for a company that may look around and says, I'm not quite sure, I'm diverse as I should be. What should I do?
Excellent question. So one of the things that we heard a lot last week was one of the biggest challenges. You asked the question, what's keeping IT leaders up at night? And right across the board, we heard majority was staffing issues, right? Getting and keeping the top talent, finding the right place, managing remote teams, growing from within. Where do I find top talent? How do I move people up the ranks? And I'm going to say a lot of all of those issues need to be solved after the first step. So I'm glad you asked that. And I'm going to build on the whole culture piece we just talked about. You got to get clear about who you are as an organization. If I wanted you to come to my home for dinner and you had an allergy to something, I'd have to make sure that I cooked a meal that didn't have that ingredient, right? If you were vegan, if you were peanut sensitive, if you any of those things, I'd have to know that, number one, and I'd have to keep that in mind when I was preparing a meal. Organizations can't expect to attract top talent unless their home looks like the place and acts like the place where top talent wants to be. So you got to clean home first. You got to look within and say, am I the type of organization? What are my values? Am I living my values? Right, Randall?
I want to bring in something that you did at the event, which is why it's important to have C-Suite work with you as a company, because you made us look at the values, and it's not a free snack bar that's going to attract top talent. That might seem fun for the first week or two, but those were not the values that made it to the top 10. Maybe you can talk about that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So when I morphed from my previous business career into this one, one of the things I started teaching was personality types. And when I met Julian and the team, that was one of my primary tools in my toolbox. Since then, I've developed IP that I call currency, and it has nothing to do with money and everything to do with your bottom line. And it's based on values. And so from 87 different values, and these are non-monetary drivers. These are reasons people show up to work that have nothing to do with money, okay? And so we did the exercise, right? Look at these 87s, pare it down to 8 core currencies, and then put them into priority. It becomes your anchor and your beacon. It helps you not, when we put down an anchor in a ship, it lets the ship move around waters, but not get lost in them. And this is the exact same thing we do, right? We identify what 8 core currencies you have as a person or your organization has so that you know who you are. Here's one of the challenges with organizational culture. Depending on who's coming in and out of your doors, they affect that, they influence that, they morph that, right? They will resonate with some of your values and move them up the grid, and they will disagree with some of your values and move them down the grid. They leave and that picture changes again. Culture is not static, it's dynamic, right? Values can be dynamic. They don't have to be static, right? Principles are static. Values change depending on the situation you're in. And the second I identified what my core currencies were, instantly I made decisions a whole lot easier. And I'm praying that's what we did last week, Randall, because people were looking at freedom and authenticity and questioning, oh my gosh, which one matters more? If I had to live in a world without one or without the other, which world would I choose, right? And those are 2 very marked influences and impacts on someone's life. And so when you know what that driving core currency is, you're going to find fits for it. And those are the places where you're going to thrive and grow and contribute. And when you take a role on that isn't a fit for that's where conflict begins. Inner turmoil begins. Illness begins. Sickness begins. Long-term absenteeism begins. You know, Julian, you asked, what is the pluses? There's a lot of minuses if we're not aligned with a culture. And I'm going to go back a little bit. You know, we talked about the importance of an organization having a strong culture and doing their homework. That doesn't mean that if you're currently in an organization that doesn't have that you're powerless. You don't get a hall pass on that. You don't get to sit back and say, well, I'm not growing because it's my company's fault. No, you need to take ownership of that, right? So the first step is do some homework, do some house cleaning. What are the values? What are you willing to put money towards? That's the key, right? If you say you believe in diversity, or you believe in inclusion, or you believe in ergonomics, or you believe in environmental, what are you putting money towards? Because if you're putting money towards to it, then you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? The next step is find out, get a pulse from the people who are still in your organization, why they're there. And why, if at all, they'd leave. 26% of professionals in the IT industry say that right now they're looking for another job. That's going to impact your culture, your bottom line, your everything real fast, right?
I just want to say, Glynis, there's one of the comments coming out saying that there's a feeling that we are moving towards, in society as a whole, a more sustainable, healthy and happy equilibrium between personal and professional. I hope that is true. And then this week you just said as well, which I want to just pick up on, is we're very good as companies, as employers, of saying, I have a problem with. So if they say they have a problem with retaining staff, then look one step back for the real cause. Yep. Richard Branson did a really great quote on it, where he said, when I asked about retaining people, he says, don't worry about people leaving. Just treat everybody so well they don't want to go. Because then you said if they're not a natural cultural fit, they'll move on to find somewhere better to work, but at least you are retaining those who go, I understand your message, I understand your vision, and I want to remain with it. And I think it's a complicated thing, because I think the other thing which I think about when I think about diversity is that I think we'd be hard pressed to find Luddites of diversity at the individual level. I think we are getting a lot better as a society about that. It's changed a lot over the last decade. But that doesn't mean that we don't see that in the processes and systems of the companies which some of us find ourselves working in, because they're still using systems in modes of communication which are vastly outdated. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Is like, okay, the old notion was that you change things through revolution. But if you look at most revolutions, they were never truly revolutionary. They were a blip before the status quo has been returned. So we have to be smarter. And I think tech again can do this and say, right, what are the benefits? Julian keeps asking what the benefits are. And it's like, you will have a happier environment, healthier staff, better retention, lower absenteeism is a big one. You have people, our experience with a couple of businesses I'm involved with is that loyalty you get by being good thing is it's no longer about how much is my commission check. They're there because, yeah, money's nice, we all like that, but it's their motivators, which is, no, I believe in what this MSP is trying to do. I believe in this vendor's product range. I understand the importance of cybersecurity, and that drives them. And so there's lots of changes in diversity. I think sometimes the other thing was I want to just go back even further was the big change for me is make diversity a board issue. Get somebody, not a board member, to report monthly or quarterly at board level about what we're actively doing with diversity. Because the downside sometimes with all of these things is what we have a policy document. We have a policy document which we can point at and go, this is our diversity policy, and we've done these 3 actions. Tick on the box, corporate compliance. Big businesses love that stuff, but that's no good if it's not actually backed up by real, true, desirable actions. So I'll get my soapbox.
I'm going to go one step even deeper than that, and that is define what diversity means, right? It's not about the color, the gender, the race. That it is about mindsets. Mindsets are crucial. And you mentioned Branson, right? He said the best way to have exceptional customer service is treat your employees well, right? It starts from within the family. And so you can't say, we believe in 24/7 service if we're not giving that to employees. We believe in respondency. We get an answer back to our customers within 24 hours, but it takes you 3 weeks to get, an answer to your employee. Alignment is important. Knowing what you stand for and aligning every decision throughout to those values, to those mandates, to those mindsets is critical.
I think we talked a little bit about being, in tech and being able to maybe find solutions. And I'm thinking of what's happening in Ontario, where there's a bill proposed to turn making a 4-day work week into law, which would basically be quite a drastic change from a mindset point of view. But there's so many things like people are realizing now that, like Julian mentioned, people are leaving in droves because they don't want to go to an office anymore. They realize that spending an hour or 2 in traffic a day is detrimental to their mental health. It's just draining them. And some are being flexible. They're saying, stay at home for 2 days or come on this one day where we have all the meetings booked and then work from home the rest of the time. So there's all these different flavors and different things that we can do in terms of even technology to help with that home work balance, to kind of re-emphasize the comment from our viewer.
Yeah, that's why cybersecurity is so big right now, right? We're empowering employees to work from home far more regularly than we anticipated. It's not a stopgap anymore. It really is a holistic solution, right? It's interesting. It's not without growing pains, right? And the growing pains are happening at our generation. So we have in the workforce right now Gen Z, Gen X, Jones level baby boomers, and baby boomers who are retiring, right? And it's interesting. Think about the mindset of work, right? You've got baby boomers who were brought up, work hard. It's honorable. Be in the office, be the first one in and the last one out. And the problem they have is these Gen Zs and Gen Xs who get more done in less time. Right? And they go, they had the audacity to, they come in after me and they leave before me. Do they get the job done? It's just natural evolution that they have grown up in a world that moves far faster. So they're not coming in lazy. They're coming in hardworking, but they're achieving goals far faster than our age group is able. And our age group is having a problem with this. And a little bit is envy.
We handle that directly within where we have a policy where we pay for 40-hour week, but everything is based on outputs.
Nice.
And they know the quality standard. If they achieve the outputs and they do it in 2 days, they can have 3 days off and we'll still pay them. So we've done that. And
nice.
That is kind of, that's a bold thing to do, but it kind of makes sense. The interesting, which I'm impressed.
What did you have to do to make that happen? What was the trade-off?
Hold on a second. We have about 9 minutes left.
Oh, time flies so much.
And well, we can come back to that question, but I just want to mention that so we interview a lot of women in tech every week, and we get some input from them. And I just want to share a few of the things that they have said that we need to do,
please,
to improve. And that it starts with HR. Whoever's doing your hiring, right? Make sure that they look diverse, right? Because if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably only gonna, hire ducks. So you want to make sure you look at that first. So if you're gonna have a fair day where you're actually gonna go and recruit people, send both a woman, a man, and various people to it. So don't just send the typical person that you normally would, because that's what you want to attract, right, to your community. Second thing is, they say that you have to make the environment open. One of the things that we've been advocating for is women should start peer groups within their companies. And you can definitely reach out to Glynis so she can help you formulate a peer group of like 8 or 10 women, not anymore, just to keep it kind of nice and tight. Build up the force, and then from there, get to another group and another group and another group. And it's surprising when you have a group together that can actually talk about these issues. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's whatever time frame you want, but just having a nearby group of people like-minded that shares this common interest can actually go a very long way. We call them mastermind peer groups, call them whatever you want, but it's creating a group of people that can talk about these issues and support each other. Another thing that they say that is challenging is some women that moves up the actual chain of command, so to speak. They need to reach down and pull people up too, right? Not just that you got into that position and move forward. And the other challenge is to the men out there. Since you are in the vast majority of executive positions, as we all know, right? The onus is on you to not turn a blind eye and reach out to people to support them, to like Glynis said, not mentor them, but bring them on up, right? And make those recommendations. And the more that these, I don't want to say acts of maturity, right? But things that make sense happen, right? You will see immediate changes within your organization. And the last thing I wanted to mention was if you do want to receive, the 19 questions that you could share amongst your colleagues and just simply have them answer the questions. It's not a sophisticated, AI thing, all right? This is just, some questions that if you ask anybody within your company, based upon the answers, it's going to give you a fairly good indication of how open, diverse your workplace is. And when you look at the questions, it's gonna hit you like a light bulb. The really cool thing there is that the more people within your organization that take the test, if you will, the assessment, the more accurate the information will become, because the experience in, let's say, the accounting department might be different from marketing, might be different from sales, might be different from, coding, might be different from management, because of all the various, diversity, within each of those groups, right? So take a look at that, and always remember that the bottom half of the employee group is the ones that hurt the most. Okay, it's not the top half. The ones that's already there is there. So those are some of the comments that I got from various women in tech interviews. And if you are a woman in tech in particular, or a woman leader, and you'd like to do an interview, you're welcome to reach out to us, and so we can do one for you. So I want to get in that before we jumped off. And so we have 5 minutes left, and maybe we can do a kind of a round robin where everybody can just sort of wrap it up. So I'm going to end with you, Glynis. So I'm going to start with Neil. What's your take on diversity and why this matters, and what do we got to do?
Well, I'm going to use one of the comments, which is just literally coming in from one of our watchers this evening, which is about working a range of different cultures, intergenerational, socioeconomic interactions, which is growth occurs when we're not inside our comfort zone. So make some bold choices. Don't be afraid to rock that boat, because that person could be the perfect fit for the organisation in any of the diversity. And definitely, I work with a guy who is autistic, but he brings such a unique perspective on problem solving to the organisation that he very often see a way through things that we would never see in a million years, because we just don't see the world in the way that he sees them. That's invaluable. So I think that's really good. And then just for me to finish with Glenn, what was the trade-off? Our recruitment policy. So rather than direct employees, what we do now is we employ contractors. We ensure that they're a cultural fit, and we can see their benchmark. And then if that works, we will then move them into full-time employment. So we kind of try before we buy on both sides.
Yeah.
Make sure they like us, we like them, and then we move it forward. And also importantly is we don't mess around with salary levels. We pay people what they're worth. We don't go with a pay banding is between this and that. We go, we know what you're worth, you know what you're worth, that's what we're going to pay. We don't quibble on salaries at all, because for us it's all about, we want the outputs. If the output is delivered to the quality that we expect, then we're happy. That's the key thing for business. That's what should all be fixed upon, is outputs get the results we want. That's me.
Nice.
Randall, your roundup.
I think that if you say you're going to build or create a fruit salad, if you're just going to have pineapples, it's not a fruit salad. I think when it comes to our business, we have to look at diversity as a way to really, bring in more ingredients to our business. Even like somebody is autistic. Imagine somebody that's blind, just putting that, making them work on the website so they can help identify the pictures for those that can't see. That can increase your business significantly, because there's a whole section of people that cannot use your competitors' websites because they might not see that. These are just some of the little things that can make that fruit salad a much more diverse and much more tastier dish for your customers.
Love the analogies. Great fruit salad.
I love those metaphors. You're awesome.
I'm now to you.
I'm going to close by speaking to the future C-suite, the women in tech. I'm going to stress the importance of finding a group to belong to and to grow with. I run a women's transformational retreat, and we go to exotic places all over. And I have 3 male friends in particular, colleagues, who say, that's not fair. We don't have, if we did a men's trip, we'd get in so much trouble. And I said, when it's equal, then we can talk about that. But right now we're catching up. And so to the women who are looking at the challenge, I'm going to challenge your thought and say the biggest impediment is in your head. And before you jump all over me, it is mindset. It is, if you are sold on you first, your ability to sell others on you, your ideas, your opinions, your policies is going to go through the roof. You got to get clear with you. And if there's in your head telling you smack, get rid of her. Change the narrative in your head. Be sold on you first. And that may taking some time. We heard one of our women in tech share with us that she took 6 months off to get real clear on what value proposition she was putting forward to land the perfect job, the perfect role, the perfect career. So get clear on you. If you got messed up thinking, change it. Find a group of like-minded women who are strong, who can give you the narrative, who will sponsor you going forward.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up by saying thank you all for joining out there and for listening to recorded versions afterwards. And if you want to take action, join the Channel Partner Alliance. That's an easy way to do it. And the second thing is to reach out to Glynis, of course, and get some input, some good advice, some one-on-one. And
happy to have a conversation.
that is right for you. So reach out there, and thank you all for participating again. Until the next Master Chat, we're on 13 now. We're going to be at 14 in a while. So see you there.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Julian.